Pearl Harbor was attacked in 1941, I think it was. I was 13 years of age. When you're 13, you don't really understand the problems of the world. My dad explained all that to me, but he was very opposed to my going into the service because he felt that war was hell, and it is hell, and it's unfortunately was terrible. He wanted to prevent me from going into the service, but there was no way of doing that. But he was very reluctant. For instance, when later on, when I decided I wanted to enlist in the Navy, very reluctant to do so because he didn't want me to go. He had been through it all, and as I mentioned earlier in our talk, war was they did things to kill one another for no damn reason at all. They were gassed all the time and terrible. So he was opposed to my going, but eventually I persuaded him to allow me because as a minor, when you enlist as a minor, you have to have your parents' signature. But he finally relented because he knew that I would ultimately have to go to the Army, and I didn't want to do that. I preferred the services. But I wanted to be a pilot. Now, at that time, I was 17. I was 6'3", I weighed 182 pounds. So he went with me, and we had the Air Force had an office in the downtown Youngstown, enlistment office. And the enlistment officer, after seeing me, turned me down. He said, "You're too big for the cockpits of today's fighters." So I could not enlist in the Air Force. Consequently, we went to the Navy. But my dad was opposed to it because he knew he liked to avoid my going to service because at that early stage, this was a little bit before the war ended, you could get killed. And I was his only son, and he was very reluctant. But he knew that I had to do something in order to avoid the Army, although he served in the Army with a lot of allegiance because he loved this country and he loved what this country, the opportunities that it provided for people that came as immigrants from Europe. So he knew all this, and as a result, I enlisted in the Navy before I was 18. Now, you were 17 at one time. Do you know what you know at 17 in terms of the world situation? You know very little.
Very little.
And you couldn't care less. So I needed help, and he provided for me. But he was very cooperative in finally allowing me to enlist. When I enlisted in the Navy, I immediately went to boot camp. And boot camp was only 6 weeks, 8 weeks at the most. And during boot camp, they put you through various vigorous training matters pertaining to the Navy. Now, I couldn't swim, but I was the captain of the athletic captain of the company. But I was able to jump off this 40-foot terminal and turn on my back, and I could back paddle. But be that as it may. When I first went to the services, it was very, very difficult. At 17, I'd never been out of Youngstown. I mean, I was secluded here, and it was a new experience, so there was a lot of fright involved in where you were going to go and so forth and so on. So after boot camp, the last couple of days in boot camp, they gave you a test to determine where you were going to be assigned and what you were going to do as a sailor. So I got called in, and I sat down across from the ensign, and he said, "We have examined your papers and so forth, and you have a proclivity toward math, and we therefore want you to go to radar school in Pensacola." Now I thought, boy, that was fantastic. Mm-hmm. because, you get an education. And we didn't have no other way. The war was beginning to wind down and end. So he said, but since the Navy is going to spend an enormous amount of money on your education in Pensacola on radar school, you have to enlist in the regular Navy for 6 years. I had, up until that time, I had enlisted in the United States Naval Reserve. And there I sat. I just turned 18. I didn't know what was coming off. And that's an awful early age in your life to make major decisions of that consequence. So I looked at him, and he looked at me, and we were silent for what appeared to be an hour, but it might have been a minute or two. And I didn't have anybody to turn to seek advice as to what I ought to do. Because it was very attractive to go to Pensacola, radar school, at that particular time in my life. And I finally came to the conclusion that I couldn't do that because I didn't want to tie up 6 years of my life as a sailor. That has proven to be the most significant decision I've ever made at that early age. And since I turned them down, in 3 weeks I was in the Philippines. They didn't like so that's my first impression. And the war was winding down. Now this was in June of 45. The war in Japan went on, I think, until August. And so I got shipped to the Philippines, and my first assignment was land duty, because you have to bring supplies in to the Philippines, and I was working to handle those supplies as they came in. But and I was just turning 18, and I didn't know what the hell was going on, and scared every day of my life. 10,000 miles away from home. I had never been out of Youngstown before that. A new experience, but I knew that it was a wonderful opportunity to serve my country. And my dad had taught me that this country was the greatest, and he knew because he'd been around a bit, the best country in the world. And I was happy to have the opportunity to serve.
Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell for notifications. And also make sure to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. For all of your business news, visit businessjournaldaily.com. For all of your arts and entertainment news, go to afterhoursyoungstown.com.